This edition of the Rahman Experience is brought to you by First Coast Nutrition and Supplements. It's your one-stop shop for keeping your body in optimum health. Get all the help you need right now at pmpnutrition.com. The Jacksonville Free Press newspaper, bringing positive news to North Florida for more than 30 years. JacksonvilleFreePress.com. And Edward Waters College. Enroll right now. ewc.edu. Edward Waters College, emerging eminence. It's time, one of the hottest podcasts in the country. You're inside the Rahman Experience.
M-I-N-E-S-G-R-A-N-T. Yeah. Yo, Mr. Johnson, it's the anthem. No, this ain't a game, plugging Madden. Got the daily news with the habit. Couple interviews, a couple things we asking. And experience the greatest teacher. As you experience the greatest teacher, a living testimony, really truly make it deeper. And life a pretty penny, not as pretty when it's cheaper. This is for the culture, never trying to get over. I know this world is getting colder. I ain't come here to roast shit, so it's what I told you. Rahman experience, Johnson experience. Oh man, you curious, breaking news is serious, but we still laugh and smile. Got them bad laughing now, moving from the left to the right like speakers panning now. Rahman experience, Johnson experience. Oh man, you curious, breaking news serious, but we still laugh and smile. Got them bad laughing now, moving from the left to the right like speakers panning now. I can't do it for the vine, I just do it for the podcast. I stay connected without Comcast. I make them stay like it's on task. I make them stay like it's on task. Keep going, keep rolling with it. So many episodes and I let them know. A lot of things they ain't never know. But we gon' take our time with forever blow. This the Rahman experience, Johnson experience. Man, you curious. Man, they mad. Yeah, they furious. Man, they mad. Cause they furious. Keep on rolling. Keep on going, go coast to coast, cause we keep on coasting. M-I-N-E-S-G-R-A-N-T. Got these flows in a smooth lion lotion. Move with the groove and I move with the tune. And vibe with the wave and I'm still showing praise. Got first, family second, but tune in, go ahead and we gon' do this. Rahman experience, Johnson experience. Oh man, you curious, breaking news serious, but we still laugh and smile. Got them bad laughing now, moving from the left to the right like speakers panning now. Rahman experience, Johnson experience. Oh man, you curious, breaking news serious, but we still laugh and smile. Got them bad laughing now, moving from the left to the right like speakers panning out.
Hey there, welcome again to the Rahman Experience. Thanks so much for joining me. And, you know, our shows are a little sporadic, but they're coming. And, I got to address the 900-pound gorilla in the room. I mean, come on, why not? Anyway, I'm Rahman Johnson. Welcome to this experience. And today, it's a great show because we'll be talking about a lot of stuff going on in the news today. So much to talk about and to discuss and at least get my take on it and the news take and that kind of thing. Of course, the Democratic presidential debates are in full effect as we play, I guess we would call this presidential survivor, or maybe the presidential free-for-all. I don't know. I mean, there seems to be so many people getting in there. We'll do a handicap of the debates to come. We'll talk about the last debates and the one, I guess you would call this guy a dark horse candidate, who is in the race, but who didn't get a chance to debate. And people are wondering where he's going to come in at. And that's Tom Steyer, because he can put so much money in there. So we're wondering how that'll go. We'll talk about that. Shootings in America, of course, it's been pretty bad. This is over 200, and I believe it's the number's 249, 250 shootings this year alone in America. We'll talk about the most recent shootings in El Paso and Ohio, and about Beto O'Rourke, the presidential candidate who actually is from El Paso, Texas, and what he said about President Trump's remarks about that. Very interesting. Also, there's an issue that's going on in the Florida Panhandle. We'll talk about that. It seems to be pretty interesting. There was a hurricane there almost a year ago, and I had a chance to talk with one of the survivors of the hurricane who says that things aren't going as well as people think or as they need to be going. We'll talk about that. And finally, this is breaking news just in a tribute to one of America's greatest writers. She opened our eyes, in some cases, our bluest eye. That should give you a quick nod to who she is. But she is a Nobel laureate, and she passed away at 88 years old. That is Toni Morrison. We'll talk about her and her legacy and her commitment to not only literature, but to making the world a better place. You're inside the Rahman Experience. The experience starts in just moments. But first, the news. Even though we're only in the 8th month of the year, we are on our over 200th mass shooting in the United States, this time in El Paso, Texas. People have been attending vigils to remember 22 people who were killed when a shooter attacked shoppers at Walmart. People like Jordan and Andre Anchando, a young couple with a 2-month-old son who was with them shopping for school supplies, they were killed. Now, the baby survived because its mom shielded him from the gunfire. There were so many victims of that massacre. And of course, the president addressed the nation about the shootings there and in Dayton, Ohio. He's expected to visit Dayton, Ohio tomorrow. And that's coming from mixed reviews from people who said the president just doesn't need to come right now. And speaking of Ohio, in that incident in Dayton, there was a Twitter account that appears to belong to the gunman in the Dayton shooting. He was retweeting left-wing and anti-police protests. Now, the shooting started in an entertainment district in Dayton, and it left 9 people dead. On the world stage, the United States is increasing its pressure on Venezuela. President Trump announced that the United States would expand sanctions against the South American country to impose a total economic embargo. Now, this would freeze all of Venezuela's assets, both the government and associated entities, with very few exceptions. The situation in Venezuela has deteriorated over the past few years with shortages of food and medicine that's causing a humanitarian crisis. The author of several seminal works of Black experience literature like Beloved, The Song of Solomon, and Sula, and the first African-American woman to win a Nobel Prize, Toni Morrison has died. She was 88. Her novels really gazed unflinchingly at the lives of African Americans and told the stories with what some called a singular lyricism. She used post-Civil War to use and bring the characters of Beloved to life, and then, of course, the colonial settings of A Mercy to the modern classic in her 11th novel, God Help the Child. She would really bring to light the stark realities of Black life in words like no others could have done. Her presence was said to always be regal, and she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom back in 2012. We pause for a moment to remember Nobel laureate and true legend, Toni Morrison. We'll be right back.
Man, do I love card night. You ready, boys? You got a king?
Go, fish dad.
Oh, come on. This is WWE superstar Titus O'Neil. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
All right, here we go. Coming down in 3, 2. You're now back inside the rock. 3, 2. The Rahman Experience continues. I'm Rahman Johnson. So, the Democrats are trying to find out who is going to be the representative of the Democratic Party when it comes to taking on Donald Trump next year in 2020 when it's time for the elections. And no one knows whose game it is. Right now, there are some candidates that no one thought would come to the table, but it has been completely interesting. The field, if you don't know them, is, I won't say it's all over the place, but it certainly has a diverse field of candidates from all parts of the country who are doing all things, some people not even involved in politics. So let's take a look back at night 1 of the debate. And before I play for you one of the candidates that stood out, who people say had the best results of the debate, let's talk about who was there on the stage. And I'll give you kind of a handicap of what happened the last time that they met. Now, Bernie Sanders, of course, everybody knows, Vermont senator, wasn't really good in the first debate, and he came out swinging in the second debate. I mean, he was kicking butt and taking names, at least for Bernie Sanders, that is. Steve Bullock, he's the governor of Montana, and he understood the debate was his chance to make a big impression. He did that in his first statement and kept pushing forward. Pete Buttigieg, who is the Indiana mayor, played it relatively safe, but unlike his first debate, he had a message that, yes, I'm young, but Older people, they should move on. It's time for a new generation. So he was really fixated on making sure that he set himself apart. Also, some of the issues in South Bend, especially in the African-American community, he needed to show up and show out. John Delaney. Before the debate, no one really knew what John Delaney was, but if you watch the debate, there he was, John Delaney. He was there. Elizabeth Warren, she was on that group, that first group. Again, she is one of the front runners that has been taking her time, but still staying pretty active, and the polls continue to push her up, and she's been raising a lot of money. I think she had $19 million at the time. Beto O'Rourke, and we'll talk about him later in the show as we talk about some of the issues that happened in El Paso as it relates to that mass shooting. But he was much more energetic this time. I remember the other debate, he came out speaking Spanish, and some thought that was pandering. But he was there. And Amy Klobuchar, she seems to be treading water, but she was looking for a surge, and they said she didn't get one, but Amy Klobuchar was there. Now, the one that really got the most, I guess, love on that night, or people say that did the best, was Marianne Williamson. She's the author of countless books. Sometimes people say self-help. I don't know that I like to use the term self-help, but she is an author of several books about empowerment and moving forward in life and those kind of things. Well, Marianne Williamson has been doing much better, especially with no history in politics. She's been doing much better than anybody thought she would. And she's the one that everyone says is the dark horse, the silent killer, so to speak. So I was looking at some research statistics, and they were saying that she, during the debate night, was the most researched name on Google. That's right. Everybody was wanting to know, who is Marianne Williamson, especially when she talked about reparations and what the United States needs to do to get back in the forefront and to make amends for what she believed was atrocities. And I'm going to play this mashup for you. This is a mashup of some of the stuff that Marianne Williamson said during the debate. We can talk about it on the other side.
Flint is just the tip of the iceberg. We have an administration that has gutted the Clean Water Act. We have communities, particularly communities of color and disadvantaged communities all over this country, who are suffering from environmental injustice. If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days. We need to say it like it is. It's bigger than Flint. It's all over this country. It's particularly people of color. It's particularly people who do not have the money to fight back. And if the Democrats don't start saying it, then why would those people feel that they're there for us? And if those people don't feel it, they won't vote for us, and Donald Trump will win.
Many of your opponents support a commission to study the issue of reparations for slavery. But you are calling for up to $500 billion in financial assistance. What makes you qualified to determine how much is owed in reparations?
Well, first of all, it's not $500 billion in financial assistance. It's $500 billion, $200 to $500 billion, payment of a debt that is owed. That is what reparations is. I'll tell you what makes me qualified. If you did the math of the 40 acres and a mule, given that there was 4 to 5 million slaves at the end of the Civil War, there were 4 to 5, and they were all promised 40 acres and a mule for every family of 4. If you did the math today, it would be trillions of dollars. And I believe that anything less than $100 billion is an insult. And I believe that $200 to $500 billion is politically feasible today, because so many Americans realize there is an injustice that continues to form a toxicity underneath the surface, an emotional turbulence that only reparations
thank you very much.
Senator. Well, there you have it. Marianne Williamson, she was, according to many, the clear winner of the debate. And she said, $200 to $500 billion reparations for people of color in America. Now, of course, there are many who are saying, how can you qualify that number? And you're not qualified to make that prediction or come up with the number that is. But, at least it's a start. No one else is really talking about it. They're talking about why the country has ended up where it is in this space of all these race issues. So really interesting that she would bring that up. And she was, like I said, the most Googled person that night from the presidential debates. Let's take a look, too, at some of the times. And if, again, you want to talk about this, remember, you can jump on Twitter, find me there at Rahman J, or on Facebook, facebook.com/RahmanJFans, or of course Instagram, which I'll talk about random stuff there. So join me there and we can keep the conversation going. And hopefully one day you can jump on and be a part of the conversation with me. I was looking at some of the times that had spent on the debate. It seems as though Elizabeth Warren did the most talking on night one. She talked for 18 minutes. Bernie Sanders, about 17 minutes, all the way down. Marianne Williamson only talked during the debate about 8 minutes, 53 seconds, just under 9 minutes. And John Hickenlooper did about 8:37. Also, I'm going to share, was it Saturday Night Live? No, it was one of the night shows. I believe it was, I'm not sure which night show it was, but they did this hilarious push. I think I posted it on Instagram. I'll have to repost it again, but they did this hilarious look at all the people that were on the debates. And it is kind of funny because we got 20 candidates, and that's not even everybody. So have you guys made decisions yet? Have you decided who is your candidate in the race or not? But again, I don't, people are saying Marianne Williamson, because she has no political experience and she's an author and all those things, that there's no way she can take it. But she seems to be doing well and is actually not even focused on the money. Whereas Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, Marianne Williamson are looking at how much money they can bring in. She's not even focused on the money. And the only other person who's not focused on the money we did not see on the stage, and that's billionaire Tom Steyer, who is working to get on the next debate, which is an interesting thing. He has to have a certain number of donors. I know we saw Cory Booker talking, and we'll get to part 2 of the debate in just a moment, but I know you have to get to a certain number of donors to qualify to be on the debate. So I saw him on social media moving to get to that space. So the question is he going to get there? And will the fact that he's pledged $100 million of his own money, will that get him to where he needs to be? So, night 2. Okay, former Vice President Joe Biden, of course, you know him. Senator Kamala Harris of California, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro, businessman Andrew Yang, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio, Tulsi Gabbard, she's a congresswoman from Hawaii, Senator Christian Gillibrand of New York, and Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington, who coincidentally is a single issue candidate. Yeah, that I thought he was really interesting. It was really interesting with Jay Inslee, who came up with, he was kind of coming at Joe Biden's neck a little bit about the environment and saying that, the Obama administration didn't do enough. And especially with that being his only reason for running, he was coming at Joe Biden's neck pretty hard. Now, let's talk about how the people who were in the debate were determined to be there. The DNC settled on, Democratic National Committee rather, settled on the following criteria. You must have at least 1% support in 3 qualifying public opinion polls, 65,000 or more unique donors to a campaign with a minimum of 200 donors per state in at least 20 states, or both. I know that's a lot. Yeah, right. But those criteria were set up, and of course, it's got to be a 20 candidate limit. So billionaire Tom Steyer, of course, was not there, as I said earlier. Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, who is in the race, wasn't there. Former Representative Joe Seastack of Pennsylvania, and Miramar, Florida Mayor Wayne Messam. None of them met the threshold, so none of them were on the stage. Also, Eric Swalwell, he was a congressman is a congressman from California. You did see him on the first round of debates, if you watch that. Was not on the second round of debates because he dropped out of the race. So we're going to see more of those. I mean, candidates are going to be dropping out simply because there's not going to be enough of the electorate to go around with 20 plus candidates in the race. The question is who's going to be next. And there are people who have already started talking about which of the candidates are going to be next. But with the way it's looking now, at least there have been, and this is one of the things that is one for the history books, there are more women in this debate or in this contest than there have ever been before. And that's something that's really big because women have traditionally not been especially, with Hillary Clinton putting some cracks in the glass ceiling last time, women have not traditionally not just been nominees, but candidates, period. And here she comes winning the nomination. So it really opened up the door for some, as you can see, women who are coming in, like nobody thought, if you look back, nobody thought Kamala Harris or even Marianne Williamson. They were candidates that nobody really expected would be there this soon or be doing this well. And it shows the progressive electorate that America is. Although some may say, looking at Donald Trump's election, is America really that progressive? But they played the electoral college card, and that speaks for itself. And speaking of the electoral college, I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that the electoral college is still something that's needed? Obviously, it was the way of electing people because the electorate wasn't that intelligent. You got to remember, when this country was started, number one, people that looked like me weren't considered people, but the electorate itself wasn't that intelligent. So I don't know. We'll see, but it would take Congress to change the electoral college, and who knows? I don't see them agreeing on doing that anytime soon. So just a couple of quick looks at the second night of debate. Joe Biden was the one to beat. Everybody thought because Kamala Harris cleared him, as they say during the last debate, Joe Biden actually came in swinging, and he did better than he did the first time. In fact, Joe Biden was between Kamala Harris and Senator Cory Booker, and so there were some tense exchanges there, but he was able to get through, and people were, I won't say impressed. From everything I read online, I think people were more happy that he held his own, and some are saying maybe he's too old for it, but remember, he's the same age as the current president, so there it is. I mean, who knows where it'll go. The good thing, I guess, is that Barack and Michelle Obama are kind of staying out of it, saying, hey, we're going to wait and support whoever the nominee is. Kamala Harris, this is something that was key on that second night of debate. She was one of the leading candidates. She'd been raising money, had a high profile. She felt the pressure. Like she cleared Biden, she got cleared from Representative Gabbard from Hawaii. I mean, she really came at her hard about some of the things that she did when she was Attorney General of California. So, I remember a brilliant woman, Tanya Weathersby, once said that sometimes the issue with being the golden child is having to prove it, and that's something Kamala Harris had to do. Did she do it? I don't know. Tulsi Gabbard said that she should apologize for her record as prosecutor. Kamala Harris said no, she was just doing her job. But there are a lot of people who are saying that people of color were disproportionately put in jail because of, at the time, Attorney General Harris's stance on how things should be done. So, I mean, we'll see. That there was a weed smoking exchange. I'll see if I can find it, maybe play it later in the show, but there's a really interesting weed smoking exchange when Senator Harris laughed about weed smoking when she was doing an interview on The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne tha God. So, I don't know. We'll see. So that tense, I remember one of the tense exchanges when I was watching between Joe Biden, who was standing right next to Cory Booker, right there. It was really interesting because he started the race saying radical love and we got to do this thing together and we got to come together. He was going at Joe Biden like, look, I have to get back in this thing because right now Booker is kind of being sidelined and Kamala Harris is sucking up a lot of the air. Also, Christian Gillibrand, who is a New York senator and had worked well with the vice president, she started taking swings at Biden. And she said, I remember this line, and she took a swing at the Oval Office. Currently, she said, the first thing I'm going to do when I'm president is to Clorox the Oval Office. And it was one of the most talked about moments of the night. So it was pretty interesting. And there were these two other guys, Andrew Yang and Jay Inslee. They were like contrasting back and forth. It was so interesting. They're both kind of single issue candidates, and Yang did this one thing. He pivoted back to everything back to the single issue, a $1,000 monthly stipend called the Universal Basic Income, and increasing automation about American jobs. So he kind of kept going back to the one issue over and over and over again. And the same thing with Jay Inslee. Governor Inslee kept talking about the environment, and every issue, everything that came up went back to the environment. And that's a question, can a single issue candidate really make it to the White House? Can the single issue candidate even make it out of the primaries? Because it's just one issue. Can that really work? So anyway, that's a quick recap on what happened with the debates. A lot of back and forth, but one thing we know for sure is that it ain't over. Now, I don't think anyone else is getting in. It was funny. I'm in a Facebook group, and one of the people in there recently said, is anybody else getting in the campaign for the Democratic nomination? I think we have kind of found our way to the end where everybody's in that's going to be in. And so now people will start dropping out. But the question is, how long will it be before those that are in will drop out? Yeah, we'll see. And of course, at least something for us to discuss. All right, coming up in just moments, we're going to talk about those shootings in Ohio as well as El Paso, Texas, what the president said about it, and what one of the presidential candidates believed was the president's insensitivity. We'll talk about it on the other side. The Rahman Experience continues in just moments.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The Jacksonville Free Press is North Florida's quality black weekly newspaper. Founded by Rita Perry and published weekly by Sylvia Perry, the paper keeps you in tune with news that impacts the African-American community in Jacksonville and around the world. Now, when you read the Free Press, you can get great recipes, opinions from people like Reggie Fullwood and others, plus your chance to win cash and prizes. Log on right now to thejacksonvillefreepress.com to connect with your community news. It's the Jacksonville Free Press.
Welcome back to the Rahman Experience.
Hey there, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to agree that there is an issue, an epidemic in the United States, and that is mass shootings. In fact, the amount of mass shootings across the country in 2019, get this, there's been more mass shootings than number of days in the year. That's right, 255 mass shootings in the country, and it's aggravating because as of August 5th, which is the 217th day of the year, there have been more mass shootings than days of the year. That's crazy. That's crazy that we are in this space, even though we are supposed to have certain gun control laws in place. There are people who are just utilizing guns and these high capacity guns just to no avail. Just in the last 8 days alone, there's a shooting in the historic district of Dayton, Ohio. 9 people killed, 27 injured. A shooting at Walmart in El Paso, Texas. 22 people killed, 24 wounded. That was the deadliest shooting of the year. A shooting at the Gilroy Garlic Festival. A garlic festival, like with the community. That was in San Francisco Bay. 3 people killed, 15 injured. A shooting at a Brooklyn block party. 1 person killed, 11 injured. A shooting at a Walmart in South Haven, Mississippi. 2 people killed and 2 injured. Now, one of the things that I had put down on my Instagram that I posted is I put a list of the countries that had mass shootings this year. And the majority of the list was 0. Why? Because there's gun control in those countries. Now, I'm not an advocate, as a journalist, not an advocate for pushing things one way or the other, but this is getting crazy. In fact, before the El Paso attack, the deadliest shooting in 2019 was at the municipal building in Virginia Beach, where the former city employee killed 12 people and injured 4. But the Gun Violence Association of America says that there's been 33,237 total shooting incidents, resulting in 8,700, almost 8,800 gun deaths and 17,480 injuries. Yeah, I'm silent because I wanted to sink in. Those numbers, those statistics I gave you, that's for 2019 alone. There have been that many incidences of gun violence. So, of course, the President of the United States is supposed to be the consoler in chief. He's supposed to come, he or she, if it were a woman, to come in to be a part of helping us to understand how to get past this. And so MSNBC did a mashup of the current President of the United States and all of the statements that he made about these gun violence issues or situations that happened this year. Let's take a listen.
We are joined together today in sadness, shock, and grief. The pain and grief we all feel, a nation in grief, shock, horror, and sorrow. A country music concert, a place of sacred worship. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, a Walmart store. We are praying for you. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and families. Let us pray for healing and for peace. Join all Americans in praying. America comes together as one. We pull together. We join hands, we lock arms. We are all joined together as one. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief, and we are here for you. We will never, ever leave their side. We are here for you. We will stand by their side forever.
There's so much to discuss when it comes to these mass shootings. In fact, earlier today, there's some more news out of El Paso. Texas is going to have guns in mosques, churches, and on school grounds. That's right. Beginning September 10th, there's a new law that loosens restrictions on public gun possession that takes effect just a month after this El Paso shooting where 22 were killed and 24 were injured. Texas gun laws are some of the least restrictive in the nation. Yeah, so the laws will make it easier to have guns in places of worship. And those laws were passed by the Texas legislature last session, and that concluded in June. Interesting, right? But looking at all that, I mean, people are still saying that gun legislation, even though Texas has some lax gun legislation, this thing still happened there, and of course in Ohio. But even though we heard this mashup that MSNBC did about the president and his conversation, the one thing that's still missing is people are saying that the president's rhetoric is what caused the shootings, right? We can look at Christchurch, the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. We can look at the manifesto that was written by this guy in El Paso. And one of the things they keep saying over and over again is that the rhetoric is coming from the divisive stuff that's coming out of the White House. What do you think about it? I mean, I one way or the other, I think regardless of what's happening, the conversation is needed. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, because we need to talk about it. Of course, as a journalist, I don't want to hear the president call countries shithole countries. I don't want to hear the president refer to districts where people that look like me are predominant, like in Baltimore, like in Atlanta, as places that are crime infested and ridden. But a lot of the rhetoric that the president espouses is divisive, and it doesn't bring anything to the table to help people understand each other better. Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who is, of course, one of the Democrats running for president, finally called it out. Like, of course, the Republicans, many of them have not called it out. In the words of Iyanla Van Zant, they haven't called a thing. But Congressman Beto O'Rourke finally called it out, saying that President Trump's rhetoric is what caused some of this stuff, and it was at best divisive. Here's a quick snippet of an interview he did with Jake Tapper on CNN recently.
But it's pretty obvious to me, and anyone who's listened to the president and will look at the facts, that his anti-immigrant rhetoric, not just the things that I cited, but calling asylum seekers animals or an infestation. Now, you might describe a cockroach or termites as an infestation, something less than human. You might hear someone in the Third Reich describe a given people based on their characteristic as an infestation or subhuman. But that's what the President of the United States is doing right now. And it's not just with Mexican immigrants, conflating Congresswoman Ilhan Omar with the terrorists from 9/11, encouraging that chanting in North Carolina of send her back. Let's not mince words right now. This president is encouraging greater racism, and not just the racist rhetoric, but the violence that so often follows. This shooter in the manifesto cites in part for his inspiration the shooter in Christchurch, New Zealand, who cites Donald Trump as his inspiration. This anti-immigrant rhetoric, and again, it is not just President Trump, but he's certainly, as the person in the position of greatest public trust and power, most responsible for it. This is Fox News. This is what we're seeing on the internet. This is the toleration of intolerance and hatred and racism in this country. This is what is causing what we are seeing here today, and it will continue to happen unless we call it out and unless we change it.
Well, you got to call a thing a thing. That's what Beto O'Rourke said, and that's the truth. You got to call it out for what it is, because that's the only way it's going to stop. But what do you think? Do you think the president is behind it? And do you think that him not calling it out emboldens people. I've had a few racial incidents, more so now than of late, where people feel more emboldened to show their fear. And I think it's their fear of being in a country, a place where the majority is soon and quick becoming the minority. And that seems to be what the issue is. So much to discuss. I'd love to see what you think and hear what you think. Don't forget you can email me, and let's keep the conversation going, all right? We'll talk more in just a moment, though, about the hurricane-ravaged area in the panhandle of Florida that may not be getting as much as they need to recover. We'll talk about it in a moment as the experience continues.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
We still got houses that you drive by and you want to stop and ask, is everybody okay?
Are people living there?
There are people, because they don't have...
Like living in the part of the house?
They're living in a part of the house because there are no motels
available
because the price has gone from $1,500 to $4,500.
Okay. That was just the start of a conversation I had about one of the most devastating hurricanes in Florida. That was Hurricane Michael. I talked to a gentleman who wanted to remain anonymous, but to tell me about what was going on in the Florida Panhandle. He sat down with me about this just crazy, for lack of a better term, hurricane. There's some really interesting stats about Michael. It was a monster storm. It devastated parts of Mexico Beach and the Florida Panhandle. Governor Rick Scott at the time declared a state of emergency. It made landfall near Mexico Beach with 155 mile an hour winds, bringing storm surge and hurricane force winds with heavy, heavy rainfall. It was several records. It was the first Cat 4 storm to make landfall in the continental U.S. in October since Hurricane Hazel in 1954. It was the third largest hurricane to make landfall in the U.S. and the first Cat 4 to make landfall in the Panhandle on record. It grew and grew and grew. The death toll was 43, and it was the wind force hit about 6,300 square miles, or about the size of the state of Delaware. So you would think that everything is going well now. I mean, we're almost a year out from the storm, but there are still issues in the Panhandle in Florida. And one gentleman sat down with me to tell me about not only his displeasure, but how bad the storm was for people still living in the midst of the hurricane. Right now, there are companies who are coming in and are charging exorbitant fees for repairing houses.
Yes.
What kinds of things? I know you, and I don't want to go into the specifics, but there's one instance you were just telling me, cost to get a roof, $6,700, $6,800 to get a roof put on. People are charging almost $30,000 for the same roof, same materials, same stuff.
Yes.
Why are they...
Post-storm.
Why are they... And so I want to talk to you about, is the Department of Agriculture, Consumer Affairs, any of those people coming in to help? And how are these companies allowed to charge these fees?
Well, one of the things that... And the first price was prior to the storm. Me personally, it was, I had a 19-year roof, and I was looking at, because it was a 20-year cycle. So I got an estimate prior to the storm, and I decided to wait until after the storm, just in case there was damage. So, but prior to the storm, we're right at $6,700. After the storm, I got estimates. There were folks walking through neighborhoods. We can take care of this roof. We can, as long as you sign this agreement. And the agreements generally stated that if you only get X amount from your insurance company, you are personally responsible for the rest, as far as the price for the roof. So
same material.
The same materials. I wanted the exact same roof. And I even called the exact same contractor.
Yeah.
And when I got a $28,000 estimate, written estimate, I said, here is your document prior to the storm. It was only $6,700. Where did we get to almost $30,000?
And the response?
And the response was, Well, right now there's such a clamor and the prices of shingles have gone up. The prices of this have gone up. Our expenses have gone up. We have no place to stay, so we have to stay in a condo on the beach. And that price and all of those expenses
are
now
factored
back into this, and that's and then the hotels or motels and condominiums the prices have gone. My cousin who lives in one of the major brand names.
Okay.
This month he is paying $1,600. They gave him a statement saying, as of August 1st, it's going to be $4,600 to stay in the same room. So you can either pay that and get the money back if you can from your insurance folks, or
this is just a hotel.
This is a hotel with 2 beds, a refrigerator.
As his house is trying to be rebuilt.
As his house is trying to be rebuilt. And his house was totally destroyed. So they're clearing it off and then starting with a brand new foundation.
So it's nowhere for him to even go. So what about FEMA? Obviously, I know.
They've come in and they've set up FEMA. There's probably in the Panama City area 3 or 4 FEMA trailer villages, as you were, where they might have 30 to 45. But those are for the folks that are eligible.
Which means you have to meet a certain income requirement.
You have to meet a certain income requirement.
Right.
So if you are, well, one of my buddies is retired United States Air Force. So because he draws retirement,
yes.
He's not eligible. Plus, he's handicapped. And they said, we're bringing in the trailer, but we can't add
the accessible stuff that he needs.
Yes. So the folks that live in the FEMA village have to meet a certain requirement, and they can't be handicapped.
So what happens to your friend who is handicapped, who has lost his home?
Well, a lot of folks are having to, with this one in...
figure out how to supplement.
Yes. We found him a place out of town.
So he's got to leave what he knows.
We found a place for him in the Tallahassee area, which is 2 hours away.
2 hours away, yeah.
And just as a side, so the folks that he's contracted to do work at his house are in his house now with very little vetting on. Now the company's bonded, but all of the subcontractors and folks going in and out of his house, he doesn't know who they are.
Meaning he could come home and his house...
Stuff is missing.
Stuff that he's collected over his career, family.
They didn't know what was good, what was valuable, what he was willing to pay an arm and a leg to fix. Some of his
junked
plaques,
everything.
Some of his, when he went to Germany and got this and won that, and awards and uniforms and all of those things. They were just put in a
storage bin.
Well, they were if it was wet, it went in the dumpster. And if it was wet but could be dried, but he's living 2 hours away. And there's an hour change. So
right.
to get from here to there, it's 2 hour drive plus an hour
plus the
difference.
Time difference, yeah.
And and he's at the age where he can't drive at night.
How old is this guy?
74 or 76.
So definitely a senior citizen.
Yes. So we're talking, but the number of housing development areas and lower, or I don't want to say reasonably expensive places, they're few and far between.
What are they saying as the time frame as to when your area will be back to viability? Because I do remember there was a state of emergency declared for the area, and because it was both a state and federal state of emergency, there are certain rules that were supposed to be enforced.
Yes.
So the question is the state of emergency still there? And we'll check on that to see, but when are they saying it's going to be finished? Because until that time, the state of emergency should be there.
They're still talking about, for basic housing, 2 to 3 years. But we've got a military base, we've got an Air Force base and a Navy base, and the Air Force base is pretty much 90% depleted. So most of those families that either lived on base or in the neighborhoods are gone because they've shipped them out to other bases so they can continue to make money being in, let's say, the United States Air Force. So some houses are vacant or needing repairs, but the family is now in La Luz, New Mexico. The family's in Michigan at Saltridge Air Force Base. The family's in California.
So those homes are just sitting there.
So the homes are, yes.
Not being repaired.
Yes.
Eyesore, blight.
Because the insurance companies are still waiting on certain things. The vendors or contractors, they'll start one or two houses and get the money and tie in and encumber the money, and then go to two more houses. So they'll get to you when they get to you.
And let's talk about that. What happens?
And they won't go from contract to completion. It will be, I'm working on 1, 2, 3. I'm on roof 1, 2, 3. I'm going to...
Maybe 5 houses at a time.
5 houses at a time.
Yeah.
So they might come to your house on Monday, mine on Tuesday.
And put 3 nails in one shingle.
And keep prolonging the process. So it has got a lot of folks, and being a public safety official, it has got a lot of folks stressed. You've got a lot of folks that at the drop of a hat, because of staying on somebody's couch, staying in somebody's spare room, staying in, there is a family staying with me.
Let me ask you this. You told me that you had this huge, almost quadruple number for a roof, right?
And that's just the roof.
That's just the roof. And there are other things. Yes. You show me pictures.
Because of water damage, you've got siding. I mean, you've got...
Continues to exacerbate the problem.
Because if you don't tear it all out,
mold.
There's going to be mold growing behind. So you've got to, get to the root of everything. And that's almost taking it down to the foundation.
So you're telling me, though, that sometimes triple the cost of what it would be prior to the storm.
Yes.
The insurance companies obviously have limits to what they will pay. My question, though, is the insurance company coming in and saying, we're going to pay what the market is demanding at this time? No, or are they only paying what they said they would agree to initially?
They're only paying that. And that's why the contractors have an additional clause that says whatever the insurance will not pay, you agree to personally be responsible for the remaining amount. And when we go back to the contractors staying in condos, they're paying the $3,000 to $4,000 and then dividing it within the prices of a roof being $30,000 now, because I've got to get, and we've got 12 workers, we got 16 workers, we got 4 crews. All of those crews have to be someplace. And
because there's price, because literally it's price gouging, and that comes back to you, the consumer.
But the issue is, or one of the problems that we've got now is the workers. Businesses are having to shut down where they would have 3 shifts, or they would even have 2 shifts. Even some restaurants shut off at a certain time because they don't have the labor force, because the labor force had to leave. They had to go somewhere else
where they could actually make money,
where they could actually live.
Yeah.
And police departments and fire departments are also having major problems because they're not getting officers. There are certain police departments that are extremely short because if people wanted to come, let's just say Panama City Beach, or the Bay County Sheriff's Office, they're short because people don't have a place to stay. Yeah. If I come in from, let's say, Tallahassee PD, I really want to work on the coast, I want to do this, I get to Panama City, the salary might be the same.
But nowhere to live.
And if you pick a condo, or you pick a house, or a townhouse, you're going to pay 3 times the amount.
What you'd pay in Tallahassee.
Yes, and the city cannot afford to give you what the market will bear. They're going to pay you as a rookie, as a first-time officer. What the scale is.
And coupled with the fact that the city doesn't have as much money because less people are coming and the taxes aren't as much.
And restaurants and businesses are shut down.
And there are no taxes going in.
There are no taxes. Yes. The city of Mexico Beach went from maybe 500 to 600 permanent residents to 35. The 3 or 4 major businesses, restaurants are gone.
What do you need to happen? And I don't want to hold you because I know obviously you have stuff to do. But what does the state need to step in, or FEMA or something? What needs to happen to regulate, to get things where they can actually grow and get the community back to where it was?
I would say, first off, would be a nonviolent town hall meeting with folks in the spirit of finding a solution, not just who to blame, come together and identify how the different silos in and of themselves are okay. But when you add all of them together, when you add, there's got to be a compromise, and it's got to come quick, because how many folks can spend $4,500 a month and they tell you your house is not going to be finished for a year?
It's not a mortgage. This is just hotels, so there's no residual benefit of this thing. And
people,
sometimes you still have to pay your mortgage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's still a part of it.
Yeah.
Everything that was damaged still needs to be paid, but people come together in the spirit of solving it, or the spirit of giving some relief. And I'm not saying throw money at this problem. I'm just saying identifying,
connecting the dots.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was $1,400 this month, you're going to have to itemize this and show me where $6,400 or $4,600 for the same space. Where is? Where is...
No, not even itemization, though. Sometimes a cap. Yes. Like, look, you're not going to charge, like they do when the hurricanes come.
Well,
gas gets capped.
Yes. But right now, it's almost buyer beware, and some folks who either don't read or don't comprehend what they've just signed will sign documents. And then for the rest of their life, and then their family or their family's life, they still got a bill from this. Because you got to think, if the contractor bought the material for $100 and he sold it to you for $1,000, he's already made his money back.
Right.
So the rest of the money that you still owe, he's not really out of it. Because he's already gotten 100%.
Yeah.
He's already got the 100% of what he needed.
Now it's just icing on the cake.
The rest of it is gravy.
Yeah.
The rest of it is, so it's an opportunity to come together with state, local, and churches are in the middle of this, having to deal with and set up more feeding stations. We still have tent cities or tent communities where 10 to 12 people are in tents that a church or community group has set up for folks that don't have homes. And these are people that have jobs but don't have homes. And if we're talking about the criminal justice system, or just talking about the educational system, if I'm going to a 2-year school or a 4-year school and I have no place to stay, I'm not going to that school. So colleges and universities are 15 and 20%, if not more, down because the student base is gone. And that kind of feeds back into the viability of those schools, because if the money's coming through FAFSA and it's coming through all of these other venues, military preference or this, if their military's gone.
We're done. Y'all come out.
Okay. If the military's gone, all of the VA money that was coming to that college is done.
And it's a trickle effect.
It's a trickle effect no matter what. So it's all a part of, it's all a part of a more of a holistic, but there's got to be one pin that'll fall that'll cause this domino effect to get us back to where we need to be. And you're right, it needs to be a cap. But where does that cap start? And who's going to enforce whether the cap? I understand we got state laws, but some of these guys seem like they're getting around them with what they're calling, well, I got expenses. I got expenses. Well, if everybody says I got expenses, but then when you look back, that condo's still $1,300, but they're charging $64. So where are the extra expenses for you to have this at this time?
We're going to look into it. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've reached out to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation in Florida, and we've yet to get a response, but we'll keep you up to date. We'll be right back.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I'll come to the door with one meal, and I'll walk away with a full heart.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
As the Rahman Experience winds to a close, I want to take a moment to remember two artists who've passed away this week. A legend and a hip-hop artist. Toni Morrison was a Nobel laureate, author, professor, and Pulitzer Prize winner. She passed away at 88. Her two sons, Slade and Ford, and her ex-husband were very great fixtures in her life, even though she was only married for a couple of years. She was born Chloe Ardelia Wofford in 1931, but she became known to the world as Toni Morrison, opening the eyes for a look at the Black experience. Now, she endured tragedy, her youngest son dying some years ago, of pancreatic cancer, her other son an architect, but she contributes her work and creativity to her mother. She says her mother inspired her to be everything she was and then some. I found an interview where she talked with Charlie Rose some years ago about writing black fiction and why she should not have to be challenged to write with white characters in mind. Here's that interview.
I think, I answered the question he didn't pose. Tolstoy writes about race.
Yeah.
All the time. So does Zola, so does James Joyce. Now, if anybody can go up to an imaginary James Joyce and say, you write about race all the time. It's central in your novels. When are you going to write about what? Because you see, the person who asks that question doesn't understand that he or she is also raced. So to ask me when am I going to stop, if I can, is to ask a question that, in a sense, is its own answer. Yes, I can write about white people. White people can write about black people. Anything can happen in art. There are no boundaries there. Having to do it or having to prove that I can do it is what was embarrassing or insulting. In this book, I did.
It was insulting that people, help me understand, what was insulting? The idea that you felt like you had to prove that you could write without...
the question was posed as though it were a desirable thing to do, right, to write about white people or to write not about race. That's what that means to me. And that it was a difficult to do, a higher level of artistic endeavor, or it was more important, and that I was still writing about marginal people, and why don't I come into the mainstream?
Aren't you importing too much into the question?
Maybe.
I think so.
Well, what else could it be, Charlie? What does that mean? What does that question mean? You tell me if I'm making too much.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I don't think it probably means, I didn't ask the question, so I don't think it probably means, but I don't think it had to do about you were marginalizing by not writing about.
It only works if I can go to William Styron, well, maybe not William Styron because he has done it, somebody, major, white, and say, as a journalist.
Can you write about black people?
That's right. Can I say that? What kind of question is that to put to Ed Doctorow, who has done it, by the way?
Sure.
But I mean, if I can say, when are you going to write about black people to a white writer, if that's a legitimate question to a white writer, then it is a legitimate question to me. I just don't think it is.
The quote that she gave that really has moved me through life is when she said, make up a story for our sake and yours. Forget your name in the street. Tell us what the world has been to you in the dark places and in the light. Don't tell us what to believe, what to fear. Show us belief's wide skirt and the stitch that unravels fear's call. She gave that remark during her Nobel Prize acceptance speech in 1993. We celebrate Toni Morrison. Also this week, passing away was hip-hop veteran Paten Locke. P. Locke passed away from stage 4 small cell cancer. He was a long-time collaborator in the hip-hop community, and his family says they're just happy that he doesn't have to be in pain anymore. His music was absolutely amazing. He was from Boston, Massachusetts, and his music was categorized as hip-hop, but many say that it spawned many genres. He's survived by his parents, Ron and Cheryl Locke, his sister Anala, his fiancée Shannon, and his daughter Asha. So tonight, we'll listen to the music of P. Locke. This is Ventilation. Thank you for joining the Rahman Experience. We'll see you next time.
Hey yo, I hear you on your last gasp. I'm putting numbers up like math class in your face. with the gas mask. I drop a jewel in the ville like Cruel. I didn't fail, my school failed. I like 2 L's. Hell, I'm nice. Roll twice, that's a ooh-wop. Your dude's hot as rocket fuel. Do tell. Yeah, that nice, stupid. I let the booth reveal. I chop a loop wheel and make the music do windmills. The strong beats stay beneath my feet like concrete slaps crack pavement. My b-boy dances straight, throw you in the craze and hypnotize your body. My arteries is boom bap, Marby where the moon at. You look pissed like jaundice. If the shoe fits, get the jogging. Y'all corny as Carson and McMahon thinly veiled. You give me that, have G-stacks in your hand every time I exhale. I bring it back. Good grief, wow. It's just how it should be, pal. My people's BEs and Max. I put the needle to the wax and just breathe. Bitch. Put the needle to the wax and just breathe. It's too much. It's just too much. Too much, too soon. Now this is respiration. I use the snare for ventilation. The smoke from the heat cause suffocation. Hear them palpitating while I'm calculating every wreck. And if I got one breath left, I'll switch the pressure from my starship control. Have you huffing hard like Lamar's chicks. Let it go. Thought so. Got a hot flow, but hell's hot.